Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey Affronte, and I am presenting on behalf of the Family Law Group today to talk about what has changed with the child support statute, specifically what went into effect January 1st, 2026. Thank you for joining me. We're going to start by kind of talking about the three statutes that have changed. So, effective January 1, there were three changes to the child support statutes. So I have them listed here. The first is the child support economic table, which looks at the parent's combined monthly net income and sets a basic or a minimum child support obligation for the parent that is paying support. This has had a major overhaul, so that's what we'll mostly be focusing on today. The limits on child support relates to the minimum obligation, essentially determining when the court deems that you're able to support yourself. And if you're unable to do that, what the minimum child support amount would be, which would be $50 if you don't have the ability to support yourself. And that relates really to the federal poverty line. So there have been some changes there. And they've also added additional considerations for the court that will go into effect in 2027. Additionally, the maximum obligation has increased, but that really just relates back to the economic table. And then the last one here, determining your income, they have added some deductions from your gross income that you will use in calculating your net income. So let's dive in and talk about the major changes. So previously, the economic table in the statute maxed out at $12,000 of combined monthly net income. So that means if both parents had a combined monthly net income of $12,000 or more, the presumptive child support amount that you would pay each month was set still at the amount for people who made $12,000 in combined monthly net income. Now, what has changed is the table goes all the way up from $12,000 to $50,000 in combined monthly net income. So if you make anything between, $12,001 in combined monthly net income and $50,000, and we'll kind of get into rounding later, but for the purpose of this hypothetical, your presumptive child support obligation has changed. And so that means that the presumptive amount has increased for anybody that is above that $12,000. So really, we're going to look at an example here of the table, and I will let you know that anything at or below $12,000 in combined monthly net income has not changed. So what I'm showing you here is the child support economic table that is in the statute. And so what you're seeing on the left column is the combined monthly net income. And then what you're seeing in the next column is the presumptive amount for a one-child family, and then a two-child family in the right column. And so you can see that anything that's where it used to stop, was at $12,000. But now anything $12,000 or below has stayed the same. And now the statute goes all the way up to $50,000. So you can see here that previously the maximum presumptive amount of child support was $1,573 a month for a one-child family at $12,000 of combined monthly net income. Now, anything in between that has its own amount and calculation. So the maximum presumptive child support payment is $3,916. So that is a almost $2,400 difference in monthly child support payments that are now being automatically calculated. Previously, the court could not go above the 1,500 number without making specific findings of fact. Now the court can't go above this 3,900 number without making specific findings of fact. So everything in between is the presumptive amount. And so based on your combined monthly net income, that is how your child support will be calculated, absent some exceptions that allows a court to make different findings. So anyone that is above that $12,000 range now has an automatic calculation for their monthly child support payment. So what that means is that higher earning parents are going to see significant changes in the amount of child support that's owed because you're not having to provide those other findings of fact. The court is now going to presume that this is your child support payment. So that's really the biggest change here, and is important for you to consider as we're going forward, because this impacts, essentially how much you would be receiving for your children or how much you would be paying for your children each month based on the combined monthly net incomes, absent some exceptions. So what I'm hearing from a lot of people is, that's correct. I could use the extra money to put towards my kids because I do fall above that $12,000 amount. So can I receive more support automatically? No. The law for bringing a petition to modify your child support order has not changed. So unfortunately, what that means is you can bring a petition to modify your child support order at any time if there is a substantial change in circumstances. But the change in the law is specifically baked into this modification statute and says that that's not a substantial change in circumstances. So you then have to meet one of these other modification requirements, which would be either a substantial change in circumstances since your last order was entered. There are 1 year and 2 years after the order enters without a substantial change, and we'll talk about that now. So that means you're kind of stuck unless you can meet one of these other prongs to bring a petition to modify your child support in order to recalculate the child support worksheet under this new economic table. So again, you can bring a petition to modify your child support order at any time if there is a substantial change in circumstances. But this change in the law does not meet that finding. You can bring a petition to modify anytime 1 year after the order entered without a substantial change in circumstances if the payments result in severe economic hardship for either parent. So that means, it's not meeting your needs in your household when you're being paid, or you're having an extreme economic hardship when you're paying. For post-secondary support, so if you have a child that is going to graduate high school or turn 18 soon, you can bring a petition to modify the child support order 1 year after the order was entered to address support for that child until they graduate college. And then if there were automatic adjustments to your child support order baked in to the order that was previously entered, then you can bring that petition to modify within 1 year. Then here's really where we fit with this change in the law, which is you can bring a petition to modify the child support order 2 years after it was entered without a substantial change in circumstances if there's a change in the economic table. So if it has been 2 or more years since you entered your previous child support order, you can bring a petition to modify just based on the change in the law that went into effect this month. And so if you do fall between that $12,000 and $50,000 range or exceed that, now would be you're outside of that window to bring that petition to modify and basically automatically receive that increased calculation in child support. And the other reason you can bring a petition to modify in 2 years after the order was entered without a substantial change is if there's been a change in income of either parent. So there will be additional bases to modify that are coming in April 2027. They generally won't likely apply, but stay tuned for that. So now we're going to talk about the minor changes, which still will make significant impacts for people. They're just not, that really the economic table is the biggest one, obviously, as we talked about. So the first one is rounding. The statute previously said that based on that economic table, you'll round up when the combined monthly net income falls halfway between one of the numbers in that left-hand column. Now you will round down if the last two digits of the combined monthly net income are below 50. So instead of automatically rounding up, you will round down. And then you will round up if it is 50 or above. So, that makes sense in the context of family law, which is generally trying to be equitable. And this just kind of gives more concrete calculations for how the court should be presuming your child support obligation. So again, really the law is just getting more specific to accommodate, the differences in the families that are coming before it. The next minor change is the low income calculations. So this is called the self-support reserve amount. So if you meet this portion of the statute, your minimum child support or your maximum child support payment each month would be $50. And so what that means is if your income was at or below 125% of the federal poverty guideline for a one-person family, your child support obligation was $50 a month. Now that's increased to 180% of the current federal poverty guideline for a one-person family. And so I put the calculations in here, and it's nearly a $1,000 difference. So that $1,000 difference in income will increase the number of people who fall outside of that $50 a month, except for the fact that, as you can kind of see with the numbers here, 125% in 2022 was $1,400, and now 180% as of 2025 is about $2,300. So if you are at that $2,300 amount or below, your amount is $50 a month, unless the court makes other findings. So that's another minor change here. The next minor change is calculating your net income. So what can you deduct in the child support worksheet from your gross income to determine your net income in front of the court? So for example, something that is often misunderstood between, just attorneys and clients or generally anybody reading the statute is, well, I am contributing every month to my retirement in an amount, let's say you're contributing $10,000 a year. The statute only allows you to deduct up to $5,000 a year from your gross income to calculate your net income. So you may be contributing $500 a month, but you're going to max out at your deduction at about $417. So that's just one example of what we're considering when we're making calculations and deductions under the statute. Now it includes deductions for mandatory state deductions. So that includes mandatory state insurance premiums, if you're actually paying them, paid family and medical leave programs, and long-term services and support trust programs. So that's like the long-term care insurance. So if you have these on your pay stubs, they will now be considered deductions under the statute that will calculate your net income. So this is really helpful because a lot of people are making these deductions or were making these deductions, but couldn't calculate them under the previous statute. And so now, it's just another way to get a more accurate understanding of what your income is in order to calculate child support. So after we've talked about all of that, to conclude, don't try this at home. Call us for help, because the number of things that you have to understand in order to calculate your child support is obviously complicated. You need to understand the statute. You need to understand the pay stubs. You need to be able to understand other financial source documents and what actually counts as a deduction. You have to know, are you eligible to modify because there's been a substantial change in circumstances, or do you fall within one of those other windows? And then you also need to be able to navigate the court system. So if you have any questions about the changes in the child support law since it went into effect on January 1, feel free to give us a call. And thank you so much for your time.